WCTV is back with another episode of Jacket Sports Weekly. Thank you for tuning in today. And today I'm joined by Austin Bechtold. I'm Caleb Yauger. We're going to discuss some Waynesburg University athletics. And Austin, we have to talk about this football team. 2-2 on the season currently, 1-1 in conference play, suffering the loss to Allegheny College 31-15 on Saturday. And one of the many things that we should first start talking about, 16 penalties for 150 yards. I mean, that's just the elephant in the room.
Right. Yeah, great to be with you, Caleb. There were so many things that went wrong for this team, and what honestly coming into it was a pretty winnable game for Waynesburg. Penalties, turnovers are always things that are going to set you backwards, as well as just not being able to get off the field on third down, or the defense just not being able to stop Allegheny in general. That was the key issue. 36 first downs for Allegheny. That is just a ginormous amount compared to only 12 for the Waynesburg offense. That's part of why the tide was turned in Allegheny's favor after being able to score in the second quarter. No scoring in the first quarter, as well as the fourth. This game dictated in the second as well as the third quarter, and especially on the ground. 304 yards rushing for Allegheny to dominate Waynesburg with only 69 rushing yards with the duo of Justin Flack and Nick Hall.
And you got to give credit to that Allegheny offensive line. They were just dominating in the trenches all day long, really pushing Waynesburg, making them feel uncomfortable. Tyler Raines, here are some of the numbers from Saturday's matchup. 16 of 22, 201 yards, no interceptions or touchdowns. And then Justin Flack, he was ranked 18th in all of Division III for rushing going into Saturday. 17 attempts for 86 yards. And on the other side for the Allegheny Gators, Jack Johnson, 18 of 33, 228 yards and one touchdown. Defensively, a couple of key contributors for Waynesburg University as well. James Davis and Brennan Boron combining for 30 total tackles, 15 apiece. And up next, we have some men's soccer, 2-3-3 on the season, coming off of a tie 1-1 against the Chatham Cougars. Even though the Cougars struck first on Saturday, Waynesburg was able to respond, get the tie, and get a point.
Right, and we've seen that. This team's been able to show some resiliency and show the ability to respond, but it's also having the chance now to score early and get out in front is going to be something that's going to be critical for Waynesburg to be able to start to pile on some victories with more ties than wins so far in this early season.
Seth Masadi netted the goal in the 64th minute, and it was his only shot of the game, the one shot that counted for Waynesburg. Now going over to women's soccer, they also took on Chatham. They were the first game of the doubleheader. It was a little more high scoring, 3-3. No score in the first half, but then all the scoring just came through the floodgates in the second half. It was Chatham scored, then Waynesburg, then Chatham, then Waynesburg, then Chatham, then Waynesburg once again. The 3 goal scorers, Kate James, Nora Moore, Chloe Zook, and Chloe Zook leads the team with that was her third goal. She leads the team in that category. But this women's soccer team, a little unimpressive with their loss against Franciscan the other night on Wednesday night, 2-0, but a really good response to get the tie and the point for them as well.
Right, I think it's safe to say that you can expect a little bit more from this team, and it's pretty easy to be able to do that, especially off of the success that we've seen and some of the players that they have. But being able to respond, we said it with the men's soccer team as well, when you were able to get out in front and grab the lead, to be able to dictate the pace. Waynesburg throughout the game was playing catch-up the whole entire way. Chatham would score, as you mentioned, Caleb, then Waynesburg scored, and then just not the ability to shut the door and allow Chatham to just not be able to get back onto the scoreboard once again. Waynesburg's inability to do that, but at the same time, the ability to keep pace is what's kept us to both teams just having a ton of ties.
Waynesburg's women's soccer, 2 wins, 4 losses, and that was the second tie of the season. Going over to volleyball now, 2-11 to start this season. Over the past week, they faced 3 opponents in Chatham, Bethany, and St. Vincent. 3-0, 3 sets to none loss against Chatham and St. Vincent, 3-1 loss against Bethany on Saturday. Getting 1 win out of 9 sets throughout the week. I mean, to put it simply, that's just not very good.
Right, and that coming against Bethany. This is a team that's lost 5 in a row. 0-5 on the road, 0-5 in neutral sites, but 2-1 at home. So it's just home cooking for the Jackets. And that'll be the case against Washington and Jefferson on Thursday that you can see on the Waynesburg University Sports Network. We'll be calling the game, Caleb, and that's a game where you want to look for Alexis Marsh. You want to look for Kayla Stohan to be able to make the biggest impacts as they have so far in this early season, because this volleyball team, once PAC play starts to continue to really ramp up and we get into the most important games that are not just non-conference, that's where we're going to see the real test for this team. But it's also been a struggle passing with Allison Johnson graduating.
7 kills for Kayla Stohan on Saturday. She led the Jackets in that category. Waynesburg won set number 1, but did not get past the 20-point mark in sets 2 through 4. And the next matchup for the Yellow Jackets against Franciscan on the road on Tuesday, this at 7 o'clock, and then W&J at home, as Austin mentioned, at 7 o'clock at home on Thursday. Now, some other events going on around campus. Men's and women's cross country, they ran at the Lock Haven University Invitational. 27th out of 34 teams for men's cross country, 26th out of 34 teams for the women's cross country team. Women's tennis faces Westminster on the road today at 4 p.m. and then Franciscan on Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. here in Waynesburg. And then men's and women's golf taking on Bethany at Ogilvie Resort in Wheeling, West Virginia, Tuesday at noon for that event. And then Esports this week, a couple of events. League of Legends against Arcadia University at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, and Super Smash Bros. Singles and Rocket League versus Marywood University on Friday. Well, that's all the time we have for this segment here on Jacket Sports Weekly. And when we come back, Logan Lepiscopo is going to break down the Yellow Jacket football team. You're watching Jacket Sports Weekly.
You're watching WCTV, where we aim to bring you the best local coverage of what you care about most. Everything from local businesses to hometown sports and the latest weather. We're keeping up to date with what you need to know about issues that affect our campus and our community. We're telling the stories that matter, celebrating our past, our future, and our potential. So tune in for all the latest buzz right here on WCTV Channel 14, Waynesburg.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly on WCTV. Here to talk about the Waynesburg University football team is none other than Logan Lepiscopo. Logan, thank you very much for joining us here on Jacket Sports Weekly. A lot of things went wrong, to say the least, for football. What do you want to talk about first?
I honestly, there's so many things we could start with due to how different the game style was compared to previous weeks, but I want to start with the play calling. I feel like Tyler Zeman coming back in after we saw Birkin at quarterback. The play calling changed. It seemed very conservative for the most part. A lot of check down passes. Justin Flack was the number 2 in receiving yards. And it didn't look like the same Waynesburg offense we had seen. The running game wasn't going. And like I said, Reigns just looked like he didn't want to try and air the football down the field.
I want to try to bounce off of that. Do you think that might be because Reigns potentially is a little banged up, because starting a freshman in Burke and allowing him to have more so of the playbook? Do you think that it might have been just a matchup compared to Geneva to Allegheny this past Saturday?
Yeah, the thing is, Reigns didn't play awful. 73% completion percentage. You can't complain about that. The offense was just so conservative. And I do think the play calling changed from Burke to Reigns. I feel like Coleman may have opened the playbook more to Burke, being a freshman, trying to feel things out now that his starter wasn't in. And truthfully, I don't know what happened. Like I said, the running game wasn't getting going. The wide receivers didn't look like they had been the past 3 weeks. And it just wasn't Waynesburg football like we've seen.
What are some of the things that Allegheny did well against Waynesburg?
Run the football. Simple as that. They ran the football extremely well. Trey Worship, he just dominated the game. Absolutely dominated. Over 200 rushing yards, 201 to be exact. He had a couple rushing touchdowns, and Waynesburg just had no answers for him. He averaged 9.1 yards per carry. That is outrageous. And also, speaking defensively for Waynesburg, Brennan Boron, safety beside Jesse Kane, 15 tackles. Yes, congratulations, new self-milestone. But your safety should not have to make 15 tackles in a game. He's that last line of defense. Being that the 9 guys ahead of him couldn't bring somebody down, that says something about the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Basically, that if they're getting to the secondary and making all those tackles, it's because the guys up front in the front 7 are pretty much not doing their job, especially like they needed to. Do you think it's more on the defensive line or the linebackers, or do you think it's just a combination of both?
I think it's predominantly on the defensive line. I hate to call out a unit on its own, but truthfully, there were no sacks in the game. There were 3 tackles for a loss, which, yes, that's always good. Get there in the backfield, bring the running back down early. But there was just no pressure created. And it seems like every other week the defensive line is showing up or they're not showing up. And it's tough to point out the linebackers because James Davis has been playing well. You have Austin Durr, 2-time PAC Rookie of the Week for football. I can't place the blame on them. The defensive line needs to continue to be consistent week in and week out.
Are there any positives from the game that you could sense for Waynesburg in this game?
Truthfully, Justin Flack averaged 5.1 yards a carry, so the running game is still there. There's still some potential to keep it moving. Reigns, like I mentioned, had a good completion percentage. Dakota Romantino got more involved, led in receiving yards, but truthfully, and I hate to sound so repetitive, but the offense was not the same as it had been the first 3 weeks. The playbook seemed very condensed against Allegheny. It seemed as if Coach Cornelius Coleman was almost scared to open up the playbook against Allegheny.
So now a bye week for Waynesburg, going to be able to reassess and just a good amount of time to be able to rest, recover, and plan for the next attack. What do you think is going to be the top 2 or 3 things that Waynesburg is going to bring out in the next game?
Well, the next game will be homecoming against Carnegie Mellon, a very dominant team in the President's Athletic Conference. Number one thing is stopping the big plays. I think Coach Coleman, our defensive coordinator, they need to somehow game plan to stop these huge touchdown plays. We saw it in this game against Allegheny, a 63-yard passing touchdown. You can't have that happening week in and week out, giving up a long 60-plus yard touchdown. Second thing, keep the playbook open. Allow Justin Flack, allow Hunter Cameron, those running backs, to continue to do what they've been doing, and let Tyler Reigns throw the football down the field. It seemed like it was check down after check down against Allegheny. Throw it deep to the wide receivers. Romantino, I saw a few times in the little bit of game I watched. He was open downfield, and it seems as if Reigns was almost scared to just let the ball fly. So I think those are the 2 main points Waynesburg needs to focus on coming into this bye week they have this weekend.
As Logan mentioned, the Waynesburg University football team has the bye this week for October 1st, but on October 8th, they return back to John F. Wiley Stadium for homecoming weekend to take on top 25 Carnegie Mellon University. Kickoff is at 1. You can watch that on the Waynesburg University Sports Network, too. And speaking of the football team, Austin Durr is set to take an interview here on Jacket Sports Weekly. That's coming up next, so don't go anywhere.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Jacket Sports Weekly. I'm your producer, Joe Veneziale, and I have a very special guest with me, 2-time PAC Rookie of the Week this year so far, Austin Durr. Austin, thank you so much for joining me today and taking time out of your schedule to come for this interview. And like I said, man, 2-time PAC Rookie of the Week, Juniata High School, Mifflintown native, 3-year letterman in football and basketball. You said you were a center.
Yes, sir.
In basketball. Taking that basketball background into football, like how did that correlate with you coming to Waynesburg?
Well, basketball really helps with my hand-eye coordination, I think, and my coach was a big and positive influence in my life, I think.
Absolutely, and like I said, 3-year letterman in football and basketball, and with you coming to Waynesburg, what made you really decide that you wanted to come here and play football?
Well, I really liked, when I came on a visit on the campus, I really liked the area. I liked the community. The community was nice. I talked to the coaches. I really liked all the coaches. So I think that was a big deciding factor on coming here was the coaches. Absolutely. And the community.
Yes, and speaking of coaches, Dr. Coleman, first-year head coach here at Waynesburg, was he a big influence in your decision coming here?
Yeah, I think so. I like his energy. He gives positive vibes off, and he really motivates us to be the best man in general.
Absolutely, and I see a change of culture, especially with these 2 big wins in this season so far. What do you think is that deciding? Does he make that deciding factor of this is what the culture is going to be, or is it a team thing?
Definitely, I think he does. He does decide the culture and how we should act, but I think the team is coming together and we're realizing that we know how to act and make it a winning program.
Absolutely, and you said you love the community here at Waynesburg. How's your time been so far, especially around here, and what's your favorite part, especially just being here?
Just meeting the new people. Like I've met so many familiar people, like new people, that it's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And going to football specifically, inside linebacker, were you always the defense specialist, or did you dabble?
I always played defense.
Always?
Defense is where my heart is at.
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely a linebacker.
Yep, I played linebacker. Yes, sir.
Throughout your whole life. And speaking of football specifically, 6'2", 215, you're a big guy. What's your workout regimen? What do you plan? Game planning, I should say, throughout these games in this season so far?
Well, I just do whatever Coach Hoke tells us to do because he's been at bigger programs than here. He's worked at the Division I level, and he seems to know what he's talking about. So I just go off what he says.
Absolutely. And, you would talk about workout regimen and, got to have a pregame meal. Got to have a pregame meal before games. What is your go-to pregame meal?
Something small. I don't want to eat too much. It'll slow me down and I won't play as effective. Fruit's a good pregame meal. Carbohydrates, something small like that.
Something small, absolutely. And, I see you playing hard out there every game. You are number 41 in Division III football and leading solo tackles. But what motivates you mostly to go out there and do what you do on game day?
I just want to win. Like I'm motivated by winning, and I saw how it was last year, and I wanted to come here to win. Like I want this program to be good. I'm excited for the next couple of years.
And you talk about winning, setting personal goals as well as team goals. What does those personal goals look like, coming into your freshman year?
Just getting playing time. I'm just happy for the playing time I get on defense and special teams. I love it. Like I live for just playing the game.
Absolutely. And, talk about living for playing the game. And you look at some of the moments that you've had so far in the season. We looked at the block punt on Geneva. Take me through that, man. Like, what was going through your head at that time?
Coach London set an amazing game plan up, and I just executed. I got blocked, and I just ran through him, put my hand out, and the ball hit my hand.
Absolutely. And, looking at this season so far, we talked about Coach Coleman, his first year, Coach London, and all of these other changes, I should say, in the program right now. Do you think coming in you were going to expect to be at the position where you are now with these changes, or were you just coming in, looking to get right after it?
I didn't expect to come in and start as a freshman. I really thought I was just going to play my role and be on special teams. But I'm grateful that they decided to give me some playing time, and I'm happy for it.
What do you think is the factor that made you start and where you're at right now?
Probably my size and my instincts, I feel like.
Your instincts, yeah. Definitely. And we talk about football as a whole. You said you played 4 years in high school.
I played 3 years in high school.
3 years in high school. So getting the difference from high school to D3, playing at different times, having a different work schedule, how does that work?
Well, I just put my head down and work through it, and I just hope for the best.
And moving from on the field to off the field, you are an exercise science major. What do you see in your future for your studies?
I was hoping to be like a personal trainer or a strength and conditioning coach like Coach Hoke.
Absolutely. And, we're coming down to, I should say, we are early into this season so far. And when I talked about personal goals, let's look at team goals. What are you seeing for the future of this season so far?
Well, I think we want to win. We want to be like head of the pack. We want to win PAC championship. We just want to win. I think that's what we can do. We can win. Absolutely.
And I want to thank Austin Durr so much for coming on and joining me for this interview today. I'm Joe Veneziale. This has been Austin Durr, and this has been Jacket Sports Weekly.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. Let's stay at John F. Wiley Stadium and now turn our attention to the women's soccer team. And here to do that is our women's soccer expert, Colin Rhodes. Colin, great to be alongside with you. The women's soccer team is 1-3 at home so far this season. What do you think the team needs to do after tying Chatham as well, 3-3 on the road on Saturday, trying to be able to turn the tide?
Well, thank you, Austin, for having me on the show. And I really think what the women's soccer team needs to do is take more shots. I said this last week and I'll say it again. They're getting outshot by their opponents basically like 4-1. You look at the game against Chatham, 33 shots by Chatham, 7 by Waynesburg. You see a similar story with the game against Franciscan where they lost. It was 31 shots by Franciscan, 3 by Waynesburg. Now the great thing is Waynesburg is taking a lot of high quality shots. Sure, they took 3 in the game against Franciscan, but they were all shots on goal. They had 7 shots in the game against Chatham. Those were mostly on goal. There was 6 out of 7 ended up being shots on goal. And So they're making a lot of high-quality shots, which is really great for them. That's part of the reason why they got 3 goals against Chatham in this last game. But they also need to start trying to just make more shots in general. Try getting the ball, take longer kicks even. I would say something that they could improve on is getting the ball outside of their own territory and past midfield. That's something they've seemed to struggle with a little. So I think they could try just deep passes over the middle, over the defenders to try and get into the opponent's area.
Now, as we mentioned before, 2-4-2, the record for the women's soccer team so far this season. And so far, during the course of this year, who are some of the players that have stuck out to you so far?
Well, Autumn Blair, I would say, is probably the one that sticks out to me the most. She's been in the net for a lot of these games, and she's been making just a lot of saves. She wasn't in the Chatham game, but that's because they had another senior goalie in there, Kennedy Shuck, and she's been good as well, so that there is a good amount of depth to this goalie position. I think some other names as well. Sarah Rentler's been great, just trying to take some shots. And I think another one who's a bit underrated would be Brooklyn Loveland on the team as well.
We started to see the team as well have some slow starts, as well as in the Chatham game, and just answering every goal that was scored by the Cougars. What do you think Waynesburg needs to do? Do you think it's partly just taking more shots more frequently to be able to get the offense going?
I think it's partially taking more shots, but I also think it's back to what I talked to before, getting the ball outside of their own territory, because if you're constantly just keeping it in your own territory or just in midfield, again, it's not those opportunities showing up for you. So if they can get the ball past midfield, past like what looks like the 20-yard line on the football part of the field, that would help a lot, I think, in trying to build up some momentum, build up the offensive momentum for this team, giving them more opportunities to score.
The next match for the squad is against St. Vincent College on Wednesday at 4 p.m. What are some of the keys to that game for you, Mr. Rhodes?
Well, looking at the matchup, it's pretty even. They're both 0-1-1 in the conference. They both take about 12 shots per game. St. Vincent 12.5, Waynesburg 12.2. They have somewhat similar shot on goals percentages. Waynesburg, though, has the upper hand with 67%. St. Vincent has 59%. But I think something that really is good for St. Vincent in their favor is they have 12 goals this season compared to Waynesburg's 8. So I think it is something that is to be considered. It's going to be even. It's going to be tough. But I think St. Vincent will probably have the upper hand. I think it is going to be that number of shots that Waynesburg takes that can be the main factor. Waynesburg shot is 12.2 per game, but that's been steadily declining over the course of these past few games.
Women's soccer here on Jacket Sports Weekly. When we come back, men's soccer is on the table next, so don't go anywhere. You're watching Jacket Sports Weekly. Men's soccer is up for discussion next year on Jacket Sports Weekly. Tyler Zeman is with us to break it all down. Thank you for joining us, Tyler, today. Men's soccer is currently 2-3-3 so far on the year, coming off a 1-1 tie against the Chatham Cougars, and that's their first conference game because the game against Franciscan got postponed. So break it all down for us. What's going on?
Yeah, so obviously, like you said, it was the first PAC game. And again, we saw the struggles of a fast start. The Waynesburg University Yellow Jackets conceded within the first 6 minutes of the game. That's obviously not how you want to start your first PAC game. And we talked about it last week, Caleb. We're going to talk about it again. They have to get off to a quick start. They have to find a way to keep teams out of their net within the first 10 minutes. But obviously, they created enough chances throughout the game to go on and get an equalizer, but couldn't get that winner at the end.
Seth Mazzotti ended up scoring that tying goal, but Michael Francis has been pretty good in goal for the Yellow Jackets. What have you liked from his play?
Yeah, I mean, he leads the PAC in saves, so that pretty much tells you all you need to know about how good Francis has been in net for this Yellow Jackets team. Without him, this record for the Yellow Jackets could look a lot different than it is. We talked about the fast starts. If teams would go on and put 2 or 3 in within the first 20 minutes, that would definitely be a problem for this team. But just Francis being able to keep the teams out only concede at least one. That's best case scenario for the Jackets. He has been really, really good for them so far, and he's definitely going to have to be solid throughout the rest of the season if they're going to come and compete for a playoff spot.
Now, we asked Colin Rhodes who are some of the players that are sticking out right now for the women's soccer team. Same question to you, except for the men's team.
Yeah, well, I think Seth Mazzotti, obviously one of those guys, plays a big role in the center midfield position. Obviously, Sam Hawkins, the leader on this team. We touched on Michael Francis, a guy in goal that definitely needs to continue to play the way he's playing. You got Tyler Moorbacher, who is stepping up, who's playing that like center attacking mid position and also center forward position. So that's really the question was where the goals were going to come from this season. Those are kind of the guys in the forward spots that really need to keep stepping up and providing goals for this Yellow Jackets team. But obviously, Michael Francis in net, how solid he's been huge for them.
Going back to the Chatham game, there were 5 yellow cards for Chatham as well as 1 for Waynesburg. What does that tell you just about the physicality of the game and just the style of play that Waynesburg was going up against in the tie?
Yeah, well, the PAC, it's always tough competition, so you kind of expect this. Obviously, Chatham with 5 yellow cards in the entire game, that's a pretty big deal. Waynesburg with only 1, but it just shows you the physicality, the type of competition that Waynesburg's going to have to go up against, not just in that last game, but throughout the rest of PAC play. And that just shows you how ready they're going to have to be to step on the field. These teams, Chatham isn't even one of the best soccer teams in the PAC, and they came out ready to play. They put a goal past Waynesburg early. So all these other teams, the better teams in the PAC, they're going to come out and try to look to do the same. Waynesburg just has to be ready to go.
Now, the men's team is taking on St. Vincent College on Wednesday as well, same as the women's team. What are some of the keys to the game for the men's team coming up this Wednesday?
Obviously, fast start. They need to get out of the gates going, and I'd like to see them score the first goal of the game. It's something that they have struggled to do throughout the start of the season. I said it last week, when this Waynesburg team is going to play with a lead, they are going to be dangerous because they can put moves together. They can really possess the ball. They can really pick defenses apart, and they have the goal-scoring threats to do so. It's just the problem is when they get down behind, they have to accelerate everything. They can't play with as comfortable. They can't try to possess the ball as much as they can. They kind of got to accelerate things, play faster through the lines, and try to break down teams a lot faster. So whenever they have that lead, whenever they get that first goal, it's going to be crucial, and I think that's what they're going to have to do against a pretty good St. Vincent team.
As a former soccer player yourself, and there being more ties for this team than wins, do you look at that as a player as something that obviously needs to change, but does it sit in the back of your mind whenever you're in a 1-1 game late into the match?
Yeah, I mean, I think their form has really dipped, so it's not just something that they're going to want to keep in the back of their mind, but they're also going to try to change. Their last 5 results. It was a loss, a tie, a loss, and another tie. So their last win came September 8th against La Roche, and that was a 5-0 win. So that was a big win with a lot of momentum behind it. And then you put that type of form together in the last 5 games. That's obviously something they really needed to change. And it comes again with conceding that first goal and not getting off to a fast start. Whenever they do that, the results are showing they can't go on to compete and find enough goals to go on and win games.
Men's soccer once again with Tyler Zeman. Don't go anywhere because you're watching Jacket Sports Weekly.